everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and I'm a wee bit sad today because we are going to try and finish off the page that we've been working on in Circle of Life. We do have a lot to get through, so I'm just going to get going. We're sticking with our Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. Most of the colours I'm going to be using today are pencils that we've used before, but there's a few sections where I'm not entirely sure quite what I'm going to use, so I'll put the pencil numbers up on the screen and also show you them in the swatch book just as I go along this time. So let's get zoomed in a little bit here. So first of all, we're going to tackle these little lily pads that we've got here, and as I mentioned in the last video, I'm going to be reusing some of the greens that we've employed up here. When I'm doing these kind of videos, I keep the pencils in their bundles from each video just so that it's easy for me to go back and pick out the ones that we want. And you can see here in this bundle is the greens that we used in the grass, but also the colours that we used for the tent as well. This is really handy for me as someone that films YouTube videos, but I don't recommend it if you're not doing things like that, because what happens is you end up with more pencils in bundles than you've actually got in your pencil case, and obviously you've got to put them all back at the end as well. But for this it's really handy. So for our lily pads, I'm going to start with the nice light greens that we used for the grass here. So that was May Green and Earth Green Yellowish. And that's these two colours down here, down at the bottom. So grabbing the May Green first of all. And one of the most important things about this is we're working in small areas now, so we want to keep our pencil nice and sharp. And as per usual, I've just got my Tagall multi-sharpener here. And when I'm using it with Polychromos, I put it on the number 5 setting, which is the longest, pointiest point, and that's just because that's the way I like them. So as we always do, I'm just going to put a little layer of this down on each of the leaves of these lily pads. Like this. Nice light layers. So these are very, very small areas, so there's not much room for manoeuvre in terms of, you know, getting some nice layering and shading. So what I'm going to do is just pick out the darkest green that we used, which was the shadow colour under our broccoli trees, and that is the chromium green opaque, which is this colour here. And where the hatch lines are, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of shadow in those areas. Again, truthfully, it's not worth losing sleep over in sections like this. But if we just put a tiny bit of that in those specific areas. So in under the base, because obviously the flower part's coming out and up like this. So it would make sense that in right at the core where those leaves are coming from, it's going to be a little bit darker. But what we do want to do is we still want to build the richness up, because this picture is pretty saturated and pretty colourful, so we want to keep in with that. So just back again with the lightest pencil, the May Green, we just want to start to build up our layers now. So nice light hand, and just go back over what we've done, and that will blend in with the darker colour that we've just used. I've got a wee fly buzzing about today, I can hear it faintly, it's roaming about the house somewhere, and if I find it, it's going to meet a sticky end. Generally, I'm not one for hurting animals if I can help it, but I draw the line at flies, I'm afraid. Flies and wasps, they're the two things that don't survive the wrath of Jem. I've got this one up here. I squashed a frog in my door the other night completely by accident, and I felt really bad about it. I don't even know how it got in there. Normally we don't see frogs and toads in the garden unless it's been raining, you know, if it's been wet, and it hasn't been wet here for weeks, so I don't know where he came from. But I went out to put things in the bin, and when I came back in, I just shut the door again, and Pip was sniffing at the door, you know, down at the bottom corner of the door, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought there was maybe a spider or something, because she's quite keen on things like that. It was only when I opened the door, because I thought whatever she can smell is maybe on the other side of the door, and I opened the door and there was a frog wedged in the door frame, and I'd obviously shut the door on it and squashed it. It was still alive and it was still moving, but its tongue was hanging out and it couldn't put its tongue back in, so I felt really, really bad. So I just scooped him up and put him in a wee corner, and he disappeared. So I don't know whether he went somewhere to die or, but I felt absolutely awful about it, I really did. Okay, anyway, that's a cheery way to start this video, isn't it? Talking about killing frogs. Okay, so for the flower parts, I kind of wanted to pick up on some of these colours, which conveniently was in one of my bundles. but I would wanted them to be a little bit pinkier. So the colour I want to grab is pink carmine. So yes, this one here, pink carmine, and this is the pink carmine here. So if we take a look, the colours that we were using before were these scarlet colours. So you can see the difference there. So we're just heading into pink and no more from red. So in these small areas as well, it's still going to look as if it's kind of tied in with the colours that are here, and then we'll utilise some of the pencils that we had before. So the same thing again, I just want to put a layer of this down, and it is going to be a light layer like this. And then I'm going to take the red violet, and that was the darkest one we used, in with the indigo over here. And that's this colour down here. And I want to put this in at the base of these petals. So again, it's one of those things where if you want to be really meticulous and take loads of time over it, be my absolute guest. For me, being such a small part of the picture, I'm more interested in the pink popping out against the blue than the, you know, the details of each individual petal. But I'm going to stick a tiny little bit into the base, kind of just the same as we've just done with the leaves. So just by popping that darker colour down, and then going back to my pink carmine, and just building up some layers. So I'm starting at the tip of each of these petals and I'm working down the way, so I'm blending it into the red violet instead of dragging the red violet up into the pink. That made sense in my head. I'll maybe even leave a couple of little pale tips, but you can see this pink carmine colour. It's absolutely gorgeous and it's really, really vibrant. And that's popping out beautifully against our blue background here. So that's exactly what we want. All about contrast, and we've got plenty of it with these. So I'm just going to do these other two exactly the same way. So aside from squash and frogs, oh dear, aside from squash and frogs, I had a very interesting day yesterday. I was actually going to film this video yesterday afternoon, and I kind of got down this rabbit hole after I'd finished my what I call it my proper job. It's not that doing things like this isn't a proper job, but you understand that I have a full-time job that I've had for many years. I got finished quite early yesterday with my normal job, so I went down the rabbit hole of trying to set up all the hardware for live streaming because I wanted to see if it was all going to work together and everything was going to be okay. Now you can live stream just by using your mobile phone and, you know, putting it on one of these clip stand things. Obviously the setup that I've got for filming videos is a little bit more advanced than that anyway, so I wanted to try and make best use of everything that I've already got to give you guys the best streaming experience, and that starts with how all your equipment actually fits together. So I kind of started on that yesterday, and I'm actually glad I did it because there was a lot of obstacles to overcome and things that needed tweaked and moving things around. My main problem here in the cave is being in an old house, it's sockets to plug things in. And I had to do a bit of sort of jiggery pokery to try and get everything where I wanted it, and, you know, cables and one thing and another. So that was quite challenging, but I think I've managed to get something that suits me. But I am going to have to move a lot of things around when I'm live streaming. I can't, the way I want everything set up for live streaming, I can't leave it like that. So that took a lot longer than I thought yesterday, and by the time I looked at the clock I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have time to start filming a video. So it was an experience, but I actually learned quite a lot yesterday, and there's a few things that I just can't get round for the moment. But again, it's one of those things where we need to try the live streams and see how well it's going to work, and then we can maybe go from there, and also see how popular the live streams are as well, because they might not be that popular. They're looking quite pretty, they're popping out quite nicely. Now with our swans, I'm kind of in a quandary about this because they're kind of merging into the water because we've left quite a lot of white in the water. But the first thing I can do to help them stand out, because I really would like to leave them white, but the one thing we can do is we can colour in their beaks, and most of you will be perfectly aware that swans have very orangey, yellowy beaks, and I think what we want to pick is the orange glaze, and maybe even the dark cadmium orange might be a good option as well. Again, thinking about contrast, this is, in terms of saturation, this is lighter than this one, so I'm thinking that maybe the dark cadmium orange might be a good choice. And you can see that's popping out. It's only a tiny little sliver of colour, but that is popping out wonderfully. So still not entirely happy here, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and grab the good old indigo pencil. This has been our buddy through through this whole page. And there's just parts where I feel like I want the swans to stand out a bit more. So I'm going to pop some of that in, just in certain places, just kind of pick and choose some areas where I'm almost outlining the swans with it. So this one at the front looks fairly well popped out there, but some of these other ones, especially this little dude at the back, he looks a bit lost in there. So again, not pressing hard, just building that up a little bit in certain sections to allow the shape of the bird to pop out. So again, this is about contrast. If we put a really dark colour next to the white, then it's going to make the white stand out a bit more. And it doesn't have to be really heavy, you know, dark colours. But it's just one of those little things. Again, we've said this a million times with this picture, but there's a lot going on. And if we put enough little subtle things in, that all soon adds up to, you know, to give you impact overall. So when you look at the bigger picture, it becomes more apparent. But there we go. If we just add in a few accents round his shape, maybe a little bit under his chin as well. So yes, yesterday was definitely an experience. It was an experience, but I think that I've got everything. I've got all my ducks in a row, if you pardon the expression. So yeah, that'll be fine. And I'm sure, I mean, I'll learn as I go along as well with things like that. You know, I just wanted to get the basics down so that I kind of know what I'm doing. And if we have a disaster of any description, or if we have like any technical problems, then I know what I need to do to fix it, kind of thing, without having to abandon a stream, hopefully. But the next hurdle now is how my internet is going to cope with actually streaming. I should be okay, but there's just no guarantees with stuff like this. Having rural internet, and although I've had my internet upgraded, which I waited a long time for, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to work. I'm still a little bit dubious about that, but that's one of the things when I do my first test streams, you know, the very, very first ones, we'll soon find out, and we'll be able to iron anything out there, hopefully, that you know, that may cause us problems. That's kind of the next step, is just getting everything connected up to the internet and seeing how it runs. So we'll see how we go. But I'll be doing that in the next week or so, and we'll figure out what's what. I loved all your comments as well. After me asking in the last one of these videos about what your thoughts were, I want to thank everyone that took the time to leave a comment and give me your input. I would always have had moderators, because that's something that a lot of you talked about. I will always have moderators of some description, and that will be something that we'll have to monitor just as we go along to see how many we need. Obviously, if there's only going to be a handful of people in the stream, you know, it's something that I can manage myself, because the chat's not going to be moving that quickly, and I can keep an eyeball on it. But if we get to the point where we have quite a few people, then I may have to have more than one mod. But again, we'll take that as it comes. But yeah, unfortunately, and you know, the few streams that I do watch is very specific people, and they have quite a loyal following, and even then they still get trolled. So yeah, I'm perfectly aware of that, but I appreciate you all looking out for me with that. Alright, I'm a wee bit happier about my swans now. I feel as if they're sitting out from the paper a little bit better. So the other thing I want to do as well is I'm grabbing the dark cadmium yellow, which... Jock's having a scratch there. You alright? Yeah, the dark cadmium yellow, which was from way up yonder, way back up here in the first video. And all I'm going to do is just use this to put a little bit of highlight on our swans. Again, we're just talking about that fact that maybe, you know, maybe some of this light from the very top's just casting down the bottom here. So just very, very lightly, but maybe just a wee sort of tickle of colour here and there. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just over the top of the head and maybe some of the feathers. Now once again, if these swans were the focal point of the picture, I may have spent more time on them and, you know, made things a little bit more intricate. But for the purposes of what we need here, I think this is just absolutely fine. There we go. So we've got a little bit more room for manoeuvre here. I'm going to start with the flowers and then we'll finish off with the leaves. So going back to our tent colours and our lily pad colours, we're going to kind of like smush all those together. So in addition to the two pencils we've already used this video, I am also going to employ the scarlet red and the deep red as well. Which again, just very quickly, this is the scarlet red here and this is the deep red here. So quite close together in terms of the actual colour of them. So you can see just from the design here, there are some smaller flowers alternated in between mostly larger flowers, with the exception of here. They just had to screw that up for us, didn't they? So for the smaller flowers, I'm going to start with the scarlet red and just go over the petals. So we'll pick out the ones that we want to make this set of colours. And I'm just looking along to see the different sizes of them. This one here, I would think. Just that one layer of pencil. And then we've got this little one here as well. So then we're going to take our deep red, and exactly the same as we did as the leaves on the lily pads. Where those little hatching lines are, I'm going to press quite hard this time though. And I'm just going to pop a splodge of colour in there. And then go back with the scarlet red and just build up some colour over the top. Now I feel like the scarlet red isn't that obvious in places, so I'm just going to go back in and put a little bit more in. And then just go back over it again with the layer of the lighter red colour. There we go, so that's just popping out there nicely, that's what we want. So same thing for the other ones now too, I'm not going to do anything different here. I had a wee pit stop there and just went and got myself a cup of tea. Yeah, I've only had one cup of tea today, which was when I got up, so I felt as if I was overdue. But when I came back through, I don't know what's going on just now, but Woo, which is our little geriatric Jack Russell, she's taken this notion just now to sleeping in Jock's bed. And when I say Jock's bed, I mean his bed here in the cave. He's got a blanket underneath the drawing board. He likes to feel enclosed, like he feels safe in enclosed spaces, so that was why I'd put it under there. And just this last week or two, Woo has decided that she likes his blanket better. Now, she's never tried to sleep there before in the over a year and a half that we've been here, and she's just started doing it recently, and Jock feels very sort of put out about things like that. And what's happening now is when she does it, he comes to see me to tell me. It's like, Mum, she's in my bed again. So when I came back through there with my cup of tea, lo and behold, Woo was in his spot, so I've just had to gently shift her. The thing is, because she's deaf as well, if she's lying sleeping, if you touch her, she jumps, she actually physically jumps, and I don't want to give her a fright. So we blow on her ears, and that wakes her up. So once you blow on her ears, then you give her the hand signal to say get out and go and put her in her own bed. Now the thing is, she's got a lovely soft bed with extra blankets if she wants them, in beside the radiator, and obviously in the coming months that radiator is going to be on, so she's going to be super cosy. So it'll be interesting to see whether she chooses to go and sleep there, given the option rather than trying to pinch Jock's bed. But I'm also starting to wonder now whether it's the same thing for her as it is for Jock, because she can't hear. Maybe she feels safer under there because it's an enclosed space. Because quite often during the day, if she can find someone to sleep up against, she'll do it. And again, I think it's just that sort of feeling of safety. So I'm beginning to wonder whether something like, you get, we call them cat igloos, the covered over cat beds you get. And I'm kind of wondering if that's going to be the case. Maybe something like that might be quite good for her. She might feel safer in something like that. So we're going to do a little experiment. Once the colder weather comes in, I'm going to wait and see what happens, and if she keeps trying to get into Jock's bed, I'm going to buy her one of those little igloos and just give her a shot, because she likes being covered over. Most terriers do. If you put her, if she's lying down somewhere, she likes a blanket over the top of her. And when she was younger, we often wondered how she managed to breathe, because there was no sign of a nose poking out anywhere, But I'm just wondering, as she's getting older and obviously her situation's changing, maybe she's she's doing it for a reason. And there's every possibility that she's just doing it to be contrary because dogs. But you do wonder sometimes about these things. And we do want to keep her as happy and safe as possible in her ever advancing years. I mean, she's going to be 17 in April, so she's, far from a young dog anymore. But that's her. She's tucked in snug as a bug in her own bed. She looks so cute and peaceful as well. I'll take a photo, I'll stick it in the corner for you so you can see what she's doing right now. She's so adorable. Okay, let's move on to our big flowers now. And I'm going to utilise this carmine pink again that we used here. get a bit of interest and a bit of variation. So we'll just stick down a layer of this on all of these petals here. Just a really rough layer, like so. So other plans for today, after I have finished this video, I'm going to try and get it edited. I don't normally edit straight after filming just because I'm sick of listening to my own voice. I usually give myself a sleep in between. But I'm going to try and get this edited today. We are forecast our first bout of rain in almost 4 weeks. So I want to try and get the animals OUT for a WALK before that happens. So that was why I decided to do this first, and then I will do my proper work this afternoon. It's only 9:30 in the morning just now. So that's kind of my plan for today. And I don't know what it is, but see, when it's raining, I'm much more content doing my proper job. I don't have set hours to work. I have a set amount of work that I have to get through, but most of it isn't required to be done at a certain time of day. And I actually... Oh, there's a sneaky little flower in there. How dare you? Oh... Okay, I'm just gonna stop with the pink carmine and go back and do this one the same as these ones. Oh, that was sneaky. Didn't see that. I've lost my train of thought. What was I talking? Oh yeah. So for some reason, when it's raining outside, I'm very content to sit and do my proper job when it's raining outside, and I have got no idea why that is. And I do it in the cave. I mean, this is a shared workspace for me, and granted, the amount of workspace that my proper job takes up is absolutely tiny because I do everything online. I have very little in the way of paperwork, you know, actual physical paperwork. So, but I don't know why that is, that I'm just content to do what I have to do when it's raining. So I've strategically engineered things today so that is the case. So that'll work out just fine. It was supposed to be very thundery. Right, I'm just nipping back with the pink carmine. I'm just picking up where I left off before I surprise myself. Yes, I'm quite happy with the way things are working now, having switched things round. If I've got filming to do, I prefer to do it in the morning rather than in the afternoon. So I'm finding a balance because I had switched around. I was doing my proper job stuff in the morning and then my YouTube and stuff in the afternoon. And I've actually found that kind of switching them round day to day, it seems to be giving me enough variety that it's kind of keeping me on my toes, which is nice. But the days that I'm filming, I do prefer to film in the mornings. And I find it really weird that it's taken me 3 years to find that out. But it's a different feeling here than it was to the old cave at the old house. And I don't know whether that maybe impacts it. I don't know, maybe it's something to do with the way the light comes through the... I don't know, whatever. But yeah, this seems to be working quite well for me. So that's really cool. I'm really happy about that. Okay, so I think for the biggest flowers, I think we'll head down the route that we did with the lily pads, because those colours are quite pretty. So I've got this red violet colour, and I'm going to pop that in at the base here, each of these petals. Let's try that. And then I'm going to pop a layer of the pink carmine down on top of it. It's fairly rich. Now I've left a tiny little ridge of paler colour just on the outside there. Again, kind of like a highlight. Although this doesn't really fit in with the picture, so to speak, you know, it's not part of the picture, I still want to keep that idea of the light source might hit this because it's much further down and further towards the viewer's eye. So I'm going to kind of stick with that principle as I head round here. And it's very similar to the way I did with the broccoli trees. You know, that sort of idea, same sort of idea. And then these lower leaves, I think, these lower petals wouldn't be much going on there in terms of highlights. I may actually pop in, this red violet's kind of disappearing a little bit, so I'm going to grab my indigo pencil again, very lightly though, and just pop in a little bit of there, because a light layer of that's actually going to turn out purple because these petals aren't opaque. They are slightly transparent, so if we just put a light layer down on top of the violet and the pink colour, it's going to be slightly purpley, which is, again, kind of fits in with what happened up here with our tent. I feel like it's not pink enough though. I feel like I need another layer, like it's not vibrant enough. There we go, right, much happier with that. Okay, so let's carry on. I'm going to do the biggest flowers like this, so I'll do all of those now. So I promised myself some gaming time tonight if I get through everything I need to get through at a reasonable time. Mr. Gem is still out at harvest. Everything is actually harvested now. It's now straw and we bale our straw into, well, we call them round bales. They're actually cylindrical, but we call it round bales. And they're frantically trying to get all the straw baled, because once it's baled, obviously it's quite compact, and if it rains, it's not the end of the world if they get wet, because it's just the top layer that gets wet. So the boys are all frantically running about this morning trying to get the baling finished, because it's supposed to rain later on this afternoon. That's kind of the objective today, but these bales as well, you still want them inside. It's better to have them as dry as possible. But if it gets really wet, you're actually better leaving them outside until there's a nice dry day with a bit of a wind, which will dry the outer layer before you stack them. Because if you stack them all together when they're damp, that's how they get mouldy, or one of the ways that they get mouldy. So it's a bit of a balancing act. So that's what they're away to do today. But I don't know whether Mr. Jem is going to be in at a decent time or not tonight. It just depends how wet the weather gets and how well they get on. The other deciding factor as well is we have bought in some straw from another farmer who doesn't want the straw. He was only interested in the grain, and that's quite a common practice for farmers that have got livestock to buy straw from the arable farmers, because the arable farmers obviously don't really have a use for that straw. One of the gentlemen that Mr. Jem has bought some straw from, his field is very, very close to the nearest town, and the kids go into the fields when the bales are sitting and they play on them, which is absolutely fine, but they set fire to them as well and they damage them. So there is an area where Mr. Jem is really keen, like the priority is as soon as they're baled, those bales have to get lifted to minimise anything like that, because I don't think the kids realise a lot of the time how quickly a bale of straw catches and the consequences thereof, it, especially if the ground's dry as well. They're going to be focusing on that today as well. But as I have no idea. I did ask him this morning if he was going to be home at a reasonable time tonight, and the answer was non-committal, because I don't think he knows himself. It depends on the weather. If that is the case, and I do have the house to myself tonight, I've promised myself a little bit of game time, and I am playing Subnautica Below Zero just now. I don't know whether I've talked about this game before in one of these videos. I think I may have done. Basically, you're on an alien planet. You have been dropped there, and most of it is underwater. So you are kind of a sciencey person, and you have sort of wangled this research mission to find out what's happened to your sister, who went missing on the same planet however long it was, before. So you've kind of like manipulated the situation so you can find out what's happened to her under the guise of going there to work. The game itself, so you spend most of your time underwater, and it is absolutely stunning. The weather changes. It's like an Arctic climate on this island, so any land masses are usually glaciers, and you get all the weather. You get like hailstorms and whiteouts and all this kind of stuff, and it affects how things look under the water. And at night time, it's just amazing, because you've got all these plants, like bioluminescence, so like they're all like glowing under the water, and it is absolutely stunning. And when you first play it, you feel a little bit claustrophobic, because you've got to watch your oxygen levels and you have to come up for air, and you get like a little they call it a drop pod, and it's basically an underwater capsule where the oxygen is regulated, so you kind of use that as your base, and you can pop back in there and get some oxygen if you can't get to the surface. So when you first start playing, it actually feels quite claustrophobic and you're quite panicky until you get used to managing your oxygen levels. And you can build things throughout the game to, build bigger oxygen tanks, and you can build like big underwater bases and stuff, as well as the main storyline. Yeah, it's really, really good. I really, really enjoy it, but I'm desperate to get back to it and play a little more of it. But it's one of those games that you can't sort of pick up for 10 minutes and just have a go. You've got to have a good couple hours to really get into it. So that's kind of what I was angling for tonight, but I don't know whether I'll get that time or not. We'll see. But I'm frustrated because I was swithering whether to buy it on the PC. Normally with a game like that, I would play on PC, just because there's a lot of menus to navigate, especially for crafting things. And when you're playing on a console, that's not always the most convenient, and it always feels a bit clunky, doing it with a controller rather than your keyboard and mouse. So, but against my better judgment, it was on sale on the Nintendo Switch shop, and I bought it for the Nintendo Switch, and it was the biggest regret of my life. The controls are they're so awkward, and also there seems to be a bug on the Switch version, and I've since found out it's the same for all the consoles because my friend's got a PS5 and he's experiencing the same thing, and the game is so buggy and it crashes randomly. Now normally that's irritating, but it's not that big of a deal because again on consoles games load really quickly, so if you have to restart it, it's not really a problem. But in this game there is no autosave feature, and it's so easy to get sucked into what's going on and you forget to save, and it's happened to me multiple times, and I've lost like hours and hours of game time because I've been stupid enough not to remember to save, and then the game's randomly crashed and ruined everything for me. So I'm a little bit frustrated. So I've got a huge section that I played last week, and I'm literally going to have to go back and do it all again. Yeah, there's that, which is another reason why I wanted a good quiet length of time to be able to sit down and play. It's really annoying when that happens though, really annoying, especially because you get into the game and it's one of these games as well, like it's really easy to get sidetracked and diverted because you're on your way to do something, you're like, I'm going to go and catch some fish, and then something catches your eye, and then something else happens, and then you get eaten by a big sea monster, and all of a sudden you've forgotten what your primary objective was in the first place, because there's quite a big degree of autonomy in the game as well. There's not a lot of hand holding and it's not linear, so you kind of make up your own missions, you know, in whatever order you want to do them in. And before you know where you are, you've been playing for an hour and you haven't saved your game. Bugginess aside, I would still recommend it as a game. It's not something that I would have particularly jumped at to play, and I'd never heard of it because this is the second one. The first one was out a couple of years ago and I never played the first one. So it wouldn't be a game that would catch my eye, but one of the YouTubers that I like to watch is a gamer, and he got really excited about it. That was how I kind of like, I watched him play the first part of it, and I thought, oh, that actually looks quite interesting. So that's what made me buy it, and I'm still glad I did. But I wish I'd bought the PC version because it doesn't seem to crash at all. There's still no autosave feature on the PC version, but it doesn't seem to crash, so... But that serves me right for being a cheapskate. There are some games, though, that I much prefer to play on a console. And sometimes that's just for nostalgia, not necessarily practicality. But I'm coming to that time of year now. I do play more video games in the winter, just because it's dark here most of the time, and you know there's not as much to do outside, especially when the weather gets really crappy. So I haven't actually got any plans of what I'm going to play. I've got loads of stuff to play on the Switch. I have got Breath of the Wild, which was the most recent Zelda game. So, and everyone tells me it's amazing, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. So I've got that to play. I think that's probably going to be my next sort of big main game that I play. For these little in-betweeny ones that I've left, I'm going to go back to my red. I'm going to use the deep red. So I've got the carmine pink, which I've put down. And I'm going to put a really heavy layer of the deep red down and just kind of feather it out at the edges around these last ones. And then I'm going to take my carmine and just blend that in. So the variation in these, it's so subtle and it's not something that you're going to pick up on, but it's enough to give some variety. And also to make it more interesting to colour, you know, as the person that is colouring the page. That last one. Okay, so let's get on to some greenery. So first of all, I'm going to take the May Green and the Chromium Green Opaque that I used on these lily pads. I'm going to pop some of this down around this garland as well. So I think we'll maybe use it on the teardrop shaped leaves. So we'll start with the May Green, and this just helps us pick out, you know, and identify all the leaves of that shape. Quite a few of them kicking about. Just getting that light layer down. I'm trying to work my way along systematically here. I'm trying my best. But I like to pick all these things out first and identify, just to see if the colour's going to look right as well, or whether there's maybe too much or too little of it. I find this is a really good way to do it with this light layer because it's easy to fix, you know, it's easy to either colour over or you can erase it if you've got a light enough layer. I talk about this quite a lot, but it's worth repeating. A few bits and bobs in here. Now this is fairly fussy as a border, you know, there's quite a lot going on here. And back to the same thing, the size of the spaces that we're working in are pretty small. So we don't want anything too intricate. So following this theme of having dark colours at the base and light colours on the outside, I'm going to use that same method with these. So with the chromium green opaque, at the bottom of each of these leaves, I'm just going to pop a tiny little bit of it in, and then, excuse me, stick another layer or two of the May green on top. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. So the other thing that's kind of bugging me just now is I have a painting sitting on my easel and I've still not touched it. And I keep saying I'm going to spend an afternoon and bring it on, really bring it on a little bit further, because I've done less than a quarter of it. And for some reason I'm just not motivated to do it, but it's annoying me because it's sitting there doing nothing. So I thought that buying myself a painting apron, that sounds ridiculous, might spur me on a little bit to you know, want to paint. And I bought myself one that's got a specific pocket for your phone, but it's also got a loop. So if you're wearing wired headphones, you can tuck the wire up through the loop and you're not going to dip it in your paint, which I thought was quite cool. It's quite a funky apron. And it has not galvanised me into going back to this painting at all. So I was kind of chatting to Mr. Jem about it the other night, and I was saying to him, you know, I'm getting a bit fed up with this because it's sitting there on the easel staring me in the face every time I go into the room. Like, I need to do something about it. But I've done so little of it that I'm actually thinking I might just paint over it and start again. You still paint the same thing, but just start from scratch, because one of the things that's kind of like one of the reasons I keep stalling on it is because there's a part that I need to fix, and this is why we don't paint and drink, because that's what happens. So the advantage is it is acrylic, so I can literally just paint over the top of it and start again. So I'm seriously considering that. I think it would be easier to start afresh than try and fix the mistakes that I've made and then have to carry on after that. So I'm seriously considering it, but I say it's just, I don't know, I just don't have the motivation. But again, I think weirdly, if there's a really rainy day, especially at the weekend, because I don't work my proper job at the weekend, you know, like a rainy Sunday afternoon, I think I would be really motivated to do it then. So I don't know. Maybe I just have to put my apron on and stand in front of it and see how I feel and see what happens. But yeah, you don't, especially, to be fair, I was saying, like, don't drink and paint. Don't do your underpainting or your under-sketching while you're drinking. Oh dear. It didn't end well for me, really. It didn't. But it was a great idea at the time, obviously. No. I learned my lesson with that one. There is something really nice about, you know, I'm not talking about, I do not advocate being fallen down drunk or anything like that. But there is quite a lot to be said for being a bit squiddly and doing some art, especially painting. I find it very liberating. And when I'm painting as well, I always like to have music on, and it's something that doesn't bother me any other time. But yeah, there's something quite cool about that, especially, you know, just when you're at that nice sort of, I call it the slightly squiffy stage, you know, you're not drunk, but you definitely know you've had an alcoholic beverage. And you're just in that nice little sweet spot. That's a great time to paint. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend from personal experience doing those structural layers, shall we say. Okay, we're coming along now. I'm getting there now, working my way along. I was just looking out the cave window there while I'm scribbling away, and the mist has descended. It was quite clear this morning, and just being that little bit higher up, we're up a hill, but we're stuffed in between higher hills, so we tend to have, you know, if there's any low cloud, it tends to settle in the glen that we're in, and you can't see very much. So it's starting to go quite hazy now. I mean, it's not cold outside. It's not cold at all, but it's nowhere near as warm as it's been. Yesterday, it was something like 28 degrees Celsius, which is like outrageously hot for us, especially in September. That's just insane. But it's been very warm the last few days, so it does feel a lot cooler today, but it's still maybe like 19, 20 degrees. Which is, again, at this time of year for us is slightly uncharacteristic. But again, like I was talking about last time, you know, I know that a lot of places are now experiencing uncharacteristic weather on a fairly regular basis. But you can definitely tell that it's going to rain, definitely. But I think that's what we're needing, like a good thunderstorm to clear the air. Flatten us out again, get back to normal temperatures. Because usually by about the middle of September, at night the temperature's dropping into single figures. So, you know, maybe 8 or 9 degrees. And things do tend to cool down considerably over the month of September. I don't know whether that's actually going to happen this time or whether it's just going to make it feel less, because it's been very, very humid as well. Very humid. So I don't know whether that's going to help or hinder things, but I'm sure we're going to find out in a couple of hours. A bit of thunderstorms. Do like a good thunderstorm. Jock does not like thunderstorms. Weirdly, he's okay with fireworks. I've never really understood that. He doesn't like thunderstorms, but he's okay with fireworks. We used to hate thunderstorms and fireworks, but because she can't hear anything now, it's fine. It's really, really good. There's some advantages to being deaf. For these broader leaves, now there seems to be some that have got lines in them and some that don't, but I'm just going to lump them all together in one. So the two pencils that I've got for this final set of leaves is the earth green and the juniper green. So this is earth green down here, so it's almost like a greyish green. And this is the juniper green up here. So taking my lighter colours, same method, taking the earth green and just going to pop some of this down here. While I'm doing this, I'm swithering on what colour to make the centres of these flowers. I think yellow might be a good shout, just for the simple fact that they're round and that would be quite nice to tie in what we've done with the sun. You know, make it sort of, it's not symbolic, but I can't think of the word that I should be using for that. But basically because it's circular, then why not make it yellow? I think that's what we'll do. And we'll make it quite a vibrant yellow as well. There does seem to be a sort of vine running, and it's only in a couple of places here in between these flowers, which would make sense. So I'll use the juniper green and I'll just use flat colour just to fill that in. Again, very insignificant, so not really worth busting your ass over. It's literally a couple of lines tucked in behind some flowers, so we'll not panic too much about that. This was very close to the colour of my bridesmaid's dress at my wedding. I only had one bridesmaid. I had my best friend. Had a very small wedding, small but perfectly formed. And yeah, this was the colour inspiration when I was looking for her dress. And when I said that to her, like, she looked as if I had horns growing out my head. I was like, I want a dress the colour of the earth green pencil and the polychromos set. And she's not an arty person. She's like, what are you talking about, women? Are you crazy? And I showed her and she was like, yeah, I really like that colour. I was like, see, told you. She still has that dress as well. It was a dress that, it's the kind of thing that you could wear, you know, she could wear it again. So that worked out really well because I wanted her to get something that she liked, you know, something that was her style. Because she was just herself, I didn't have grand plans. I was like, as long as it's this colour, you can wear anything you want. And that's what she did. And she has worn it since. Okay, so just as I did before, I put the darker colour down at the bottom. And then I'm going back with my earth green, or my bridesmaid dress green. And I'm literally just going to fill in all these flowers. So, these leaves, they're leaves, Gem, they're leaves. So I'll probably cut this down a fair bit because I'm just repeating the same technique, and we've done it 3 times now, you know, between the flowers and the other leaves as well. So I'll just do this first little bit here, the first frond. I see the other thing I'm going to do is find the tiny little vines as well. There's one there. I'm just going to make that really dark. There's no point in worrying about them. I think that's one in there as well now that I see it. See, this is what happens. Right, that's it, I think. Okay. Yeah, so let's get the earth green back on the go here. Now, a good trick with this as well is with some of these underneath leaves, so at the bottom of the garland, if you want to make them darker without having to mess about too much, you know, as if the flower's casting a shadow over the leaf, when you're going back over with your earth green, if you start over your darker colour, so start at the base of the leaf, and you can actually pull some of that juniper green out with the earth green, and it will make it look darker. So that's just a sort of quick, I wouldn't say it's a cheats way to do things, but it's quite handy to be able to do that without having to, you know, keep switching back and forth between your pencils. Just when I was talking about that contentment of working when it's raining outside, I would love to hear if any of you have got a task or a particular thing that you like to do when it's raining. I'm just wondering if it's just me being a weirdo or whether, other people have preferences for things like that as well. My friend's just moved into a new house. She's just bought herself her first house. She's I don't know. I don't want to say struggling, that's the wrong term, I think. But she's finding it very odd because, unfortunately, our little dog passed away. He was an old boy, he was lovely, but he was an old boy. And now all of a sudden she's by herself. And she said because she's not completely settled in, she only moved in like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but she's starting to kind of get things where she wants them and, kind of like square the place up to her liking. But she said that she just kind of sits and stares around and kind of feels like, well, there's nothing to do, so I might as well go out. And she feels as if she should be appreciating, our house a little bit more than that. But I said to her that, some people just aren't that kind of person. Like, I'm a total homebody, like, absolutely. I love being at home. And if I have got the very odd time, it's really, really rare for me, but if I have got nothing to do, there's like 10 million things I would love to do at home, and it's picking one. And my friend's like the complete opposite. And I said to her, I was like, some people are just like that though, but she's used to living in the town and she's used to being surrounded by things to do, big open social circles, lots of socialising, lots of meals out. And she probably eats out the majority of the time. I would say she probably, meets friends and eats in restaurants and bars or gets takeaway more often than she actually eats at home and cooks herself a meal. And it's just because that's the kind of place that she lives in. I said to her, I was like, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think she's just feeling guilty because she's spent all this money buying in a house and she doesn't want to sit in it. I thought it was funny. She didn't find it funny at all. But it's quite interesting that she's feeling a guilt about it. And she said to me, she says, well, if you had spare time, like, what would you do? And I was like, what would I do? Oh, and I like reeled off this huge list of things that I really enjoy doing if I don't have to work or I don't have, a list of chores the length of my arm. And I was like, oh, sit and play the guitar or do some yoga or, like play the Xbox or, yeah. And she's like, wow. And she's like, but do you not get fed up after a wee while? And I'm like, no, because I hardly ever get to do these things. But her equivalent of that is, going out and meeting her friends or, going to an event or going to a gig and I think she's kind of craving that. And the way the restrictions are working, everyone's still a little bit cautious about holding things like that. So I think that's what she's missing. It's not the fact that she's feeling guilty about her new house. But time will tell. Time will tell. I don't even know what that is going on in there, but I'm going to make it really dark. I think the other thing for me as well, being at home, is I only have to step out my door and I'm in a very, serene setting and I've got lots of places I can go on the farm as well. So when I'm at home, I never feel as if I'm stuck at home. I don't even know if that kind of makes sense, but I don't ever feel as if I'm wedged in the house and I can't go anywhere. I don't get that feeling, and it's just because obviously I can just put a pair of wellies on and off I go. You can wander for miles here. Nothing's stopping you. And it's really nice to have that freedom. Like, I love that freedom, and I don't get that feeling being in a built up area. Because you can quite easily walk out the door of your apartment or your flat and, go and people watch. Because that's something, I really enjoy doing that on holiday. Finding a little cafe or something or a little bar and sit outside and literally just watch people go by. And that's one of Mr. Jem and I's favourite things to do when we go on holiday. And we make up little stories about the people that are walking past, maybe if they've got kids or a certain type of job. And it's just fun. It's a really nice way to pass the time. And I don't get that at all when I'm in the city. Like, I don't. I just always feel very sort of hemmed in and harassed. Just like as if I'm being rushed all the time, and it's just a different pace. It's just a different way of things. But I never find that when I go on holiday. But I think it's just because my brain's in in a different space. Really, really weird. Really weird. Right, I'm going to grab a yellow. So this was the dark cadmium yellows which you used on the swans there. So really, really sharp, pointy point, like as pointy as I can get it. And I'm going to press really, really hard, and I'm going to colour in the middle parts of these flowers. Press so hard I snapped my tip. That was too hard. That's when you know you're pressing too hard. I was contemplating these wee ding-dangly things down here, and I think I'm just going to leave them. I don't think I'm going to colour them in. They almost look like upside down dandelions, you know, the ones that you used to blow on as a kid, the fluffy ones? I don't know what if they've got a proper name. Okay, never mind, stop talking, Jem. Okay, for the final touches on the water here, I actually did this, I've talked about this before, but I did this in the last colour along series we did as well. And I have got some white gouache here, and this is the Winsor & Newton Designer's Gouache in permanent white. This is the one I use for everything, like I use this for highlights and all my animal portraits and everything as well. And this is just to get a sort of foam effect on the water. You don't need to have fancy gouache. I have it on good authority that the Arteza gouache is good. So if it's something that you're, you know, if you are a colourist and it's not something you're going to use all the time, it's fairly cheap to pick up and a tube lasts ages, but it's well worth it. So it's great for highlights. You will not get a better highlight than you will with gouache. And I literally take it straight from the tube, and a cheap or old paintbrush is best for this technique. So you can see that this was one of the really unimpressive ones we got in a subscription box, and it's what I call a pony brush. It's made of horsehair. And it's pretty rough around the edges, but we are going to use that to our advantage. And I'll literally just dip it into the tube, pick up some of the paint. So you can see there's quite a lot of paint on that there. And I always get a scrap of paper and I just take off most of it. So it's almost like a dry brushing technique we're doing. And then off we go. Straight up and down, splodge, splodge, splodge. I'm just going to put this onto manual focus because when I do this it sends the autofocus crazy. And we just dab it on, and it gives a really nice sea foam effect, or in this case a waterfall foam effect. It's one of these things, it's so simple, and say that for the sake of an old paintbrush and a tube of gouache, it's a great little trick to have up your sleeve. I don't want to overdo it. I was thinking about these bubbles, and do you know what, I'm just going to leave them alone. So we've got this part up here. Right, and there we have it. We are done. Is it a little bit sad but a little bit happy at the same time? I have enjoyed this picture way more than I ever thought I would. I have had so much fun with this. I really like the art style as well, and I'm so grateful to Helena for sending me this. She gifted this to me. Helena has her own YouTube channel. She's a long-term cave watcher. Or caver. She's a long-term caver, and she gifted this very kindly to me, which was so nice of her, and I'm so glad that she did. So you can check out Helena's colouring channel, The Colouring Zone. I will leave the link down in the description. So that's us for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this little series as well, and I would absolutely love to hear anything you have to say down in the comments. Please feel free to open your mouth, or your keyboard as the case may be, and let your guts rumble. For the next few colouring videos, I'm not going to start another series just yet until we kind of decide what we're doing with the live streaming thing, but I will be doing standalone colouring videos, and I'll maybe invite you back into the ink house with me for, you know, maybe like half a page or something in there. So if there's anything like that that you want me to do that would maybe stand alone rather than part of a series, please feel free to suggest anything down in the comments below as well. I'm always open to suggestions for things like that. So that's it for today, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to you if you've watched the whole series for this page. And I will see you back in the cave on Thursday for another video. So have a good day, everyone. Please stay safe, take care of each other. Bye-bye for now.